Welcome to the panel of Big Ideas, Small Stages, Exploring Theatricality. I'm Roddy. I'm the artist service. I am the artist programs director. Exciting. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about today's panel with these lovely panelists here on stage. Before I get much further into it, I kind of want to do a land acknowledgement. You know, we've done ones at the top of every panel, so for those in the room, it might be a repeat, but for those watching on YouTube, this is probably the first time you're hearing it at this video. So, the Hollywood Fringe acknowledges that we are on the unceded lands of the Gabrielinos, Tongva, and Chumash peoples, and our statement serves to practice as we commit to furthering our connection to indigenous communities of past, present, and emerging. Again, for more information on all of this, you can check out Hollywood Fringe, www.hollywoodfringe.org/land. As I mentioned in the previous one, participating in Fringe producing your show, we do require that you do open with a land acknowledgement. We do send an audio recording. You can use that. You can use whatever you want. Some venues even have their own, but it's just important to us that you do include one. Again, as an introduction, I'm Roddy. I work for the Hollywood Fringe Festival. My pronouns are he, him. As a visual description, I'm wearing green dress shoes, purple socks, dark jeans, pink corduroy button-up. I have curly hair, wearing glasses, and I'll be moderating. I started Fringe, which is the other thing that we're going to ask you guys. I started as an artist in 2023 with an ensemble Fringe show. And then the following years of 2024 and 2025, I joined as staff, and my role here is like supporting the artists. I do artist one-on-ones. I lead the scholarship program, the artist fund. A lot of programs so you'll see my face a lot, as well as, there's only 5. We're a small team. So you'll see a lot of us everywhere. But enough about me. I'd love to introduce our panelists. And if you would like to introduce yourself, please. It's pronouns, visual description, how you came to Fringe, your Fringe show. And I'll remind you if anything gets lost in the shuffle.
Great. All right. My name is Young Jane. Pronouns are they, them. Visual description, I'm wearing blue sneakers, ripped up gray jeans, and a very sparkly black sweater, hat. And I did my first Fringe solo show in 2018, I want to say. And I did it at the Actors Company. And it was just me and a former cast member who I did rent with years ago. She came in and directed it, and we were basically just responding to what was going on in the world at the time.
My name is Benjamin McFadden. My pronouns are he, him. I am wearing old brown boots, blue jeans, and a pink and white shirt, like checkered shirt. And I have a beard, a red beard. I first came to Fringe in 2019. A friend of mine whose company is called Fractured Shakespeare. Her name's Krista Adams. They take Shakespeare's plays and they pull apart the text and kind of repurpose it with sort of a feminist lean. And this was called Speak I Will. And I helped co-direct that with my wife, Jessica, and another director. And that was I was a tertiary in that. I didn't really have hands-on. So Time Machine this last year was my first real personal project for Fringe.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for being here. A little recap of what this panel is going to really be about. So, again, hence the title, Big Ideas, Small Stages, Exploring Theatricality. A lot of Fringe venues are in a black box space or it's the blank canvas kind of area. And we want to talk about how, as a writer, you'll have these larger-than-life ideas, and then typically as writers who are also producing their work or just producing their work in general, how do you accomplish those larger-than-life ideas in a space with our certain limitations? To give you all a quick little brief rundown about a day in the life of a Fringe show during June. So you will typically have 15 minutes to enter into a theater as well as get your audience into the space. You then perform on whatever amount of time you booked your space, whether it be an hour, 75, 90. Every venue does it differently. And then you have a following 15 minutes to typically load out all your stuff and for your audience to exit. Only for then the next 15 minutes, there'd be another group of audience members for a different show. So it's a matter of having that time constraint, but also being respectful of the next show coming into your space. You don't really want to, and many venues have restrictions, but like, don't litter the stage and then make it someone else's problem. It's how do you accomplish all of that in that time? And there's a couple other time constraints too. Like what we're seeing here is like a rep plot. It's what is normally in the theater, and you're not really hanging lights for a special effect. You're just using what the venue has and trying to accomplish it all. And there are fun games. Like you will get to shop around your venues, and they'll have different things. And we'll talk about this too. This is a writing and producing workshop conversation for this panel. And let me think, anything else unique about that? Well, we'll get there when we get there. But first, focusing on the writing portion. Oh my God, this is like
Ben is fine.
okay. I just wanted to make sure because sorry about that. Ben, remind me, because was it a story adapted from H.G. Wells?
Yeah, it was Time Machine adapted from the H.G. Wells. No.
Oh, great. Well, we'll start with you, Ben, and then we'll take it to Young Jane. When did you start writing the show? And again, what's the timeline? We've talked about this with the previous panelists, and I'd love to gauge that as well.
So when I first started adapting the Time Machine, it was in the middle of COVID, and so I had a lot of free time. And it wasn't like I was adapting it with the intention of producing it for Fringe, but I was adapting it with the idea of someday producing it. So, that immediately, just that concept of knowing that I would be producing it and also directing it sort of like really assisted me in the adaptation process.
Yeah. And then Young Jane, you kind of already mentioned it was a more reactionary work, but when was the timeline?
Timeline for this? Well, first of all, since Young Jane does incorporate songs into the piece, I started with those first. I had these songs, these tracks for like years, and I was kind of at a period where I kind of didn't want to do theater anymore. So like I just had a bunch of song lyrics, and then, we got into this country is in the position that it's in right now, and I was like, oh, that's what I was ready for. So I need to go back to the theater. Can't escape it. So I just kind of started writing the actual story behind the songs maybe at the beginning of this year.
Yeah.
And just kind of it's 21 from there.
Awesome. And as we've heard from a couple of panelists prior to this one, the writing process is varied across the board, where we'll have people writing for a couple of years and during the lockdown, but also we hear a lot of people, one, either being like very reactionary to what's happening right now, or also being like, it is December, the festival happens in June, I'm going to start doing it. I think I even had a typical journey like in 2023. Like I started in December, and I just because there was some holidays that I had time, and then the production kind of took over from when that happens. And for both of you, when does your writing brain merge with your producer brain? Is that happening concurrently, or is there like I've written this, now let's see how?
I would say like my writer brain and my producer brain are going off at the same time. I think I've done like enough shows where I'm like just mindful right off the bat of things that can go wrong and what limitations are. It really helps me when I already know the rules. So that way I can incorporate that into my script. Like, oh, I can't have, this many characters on stage, for instance, because like, oh, they need to do a costume change. I'm keeping that in mind. I had a theater teacher who told me like, always, keep in mind when you're writing, write for the backstage people as well.
Yeah, that is so thoughtful. I rarely do.
Yeah, I think about all of that because it's like that's so fascinating to me, and I'm kind of a control freak, so I like think about all of it. Yeah, so I know what everyone else is going through.
That is so kind. I've written shows where like I have characters who are basically on stage every single time, and when they're not, they're changing. And so like I had a show where in a 7-person show, 5 people had costume changes in every scene, and 2 people were just on stage the whole time. You learn a lot. But Ben, please, if you want to talk about that as well, your producer brain, director brain.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the playwright brain. Mine.
Yes. I mean, so the writing process went. I had a lot of stages, mostly just adapting it. The first adaptation was kind of like a little verbatim. It was just kind of like a first pass adaptation with a lot of like little changes that I knew I was going to make. But I think like in my brain when writing it, I had maybe like 3 levels of production possibility as I'm going at it. As a director and a producer, and thinking like, great, if this play were at A Noise Within or whatever, like what would it look like with this budget? And I can picture that, and I can see that, and I can apply that same script to that idea, and then I can start like tearing down from there. And so I think like for me, like this was in the sort of this approach for Fringe was definitely like not it's just with a Fringe perspective, like attack on the same script. So I definitely once I knew I was producing it for Fringe, and I made the choice, and I clicked the button, I went back to the script, and then I started cutting first off, and then just really starting to like think through all of the possibilities with the limitations.
Yeah. No, incredible, because there is this thing of like, again, we will all get swept up in the moment of doing our Fringe show and being like, oh my God, this is what it needs to be, and it needs to be at this level. But also keeping in mind that more often than not, Fringe is like the first time your work is hitting a stage, and that it's not the last time. It might be a month from then when you remount it, or it might be 3 years from then. It doesn't matter when, but like just know that work will continue evolving as it naturally does. And so you won't always get like your equity. One of those 13 theaters in LA that has like a much larger budget. They're like, no, let me do what I can do now, and how can I make the work speak for itself and not detract from what I'm trying to do here. So I think it's such a brilliant way of looking at it. For both of you, because Young Jane, for me, if I'm mistaken, but yours is a solo show, and then Ben, we have an ensemble show. How many people away from the stage, like we're not talking about actors, but like production-wise, are there? Did you have an outside director? Did you have an outside designer? How many moving pieces are there for your shows that people don't see on stage?
I mean, so I workshopped it on Zoom, classic Zoom workshop during COVID. So I had those actors who read in that, as well as a friend who sort of mediated that conversation, that writing, like the post-read conversation. So those folks were definitely involved. We then did a workshop of the script that we saw like a couple weeks before we started rehearsal. And then I had a puppet director and designer. Who's one of my creative partners, Ben Burris. I brought him in very early because I knew that I wanted puppets, and it's like his specialty. And I knew that I couldn't achieve what I wanted without it. So he was a huge play doesn't happen without him. And then I had a prop designer, and a lot of the other work was done with ensemble members. So like my wife, who is the time traveler, also helped with costumes. One of our other actors also helped design costumes. And it was, the team effort. I had one of the ensemble members jumped in and said, I'll take on social media and marketing. And she was like, thank you, please do that. So yeah, it was a tight-knit group of folks who all like shared the passion of the script and the vision, which really sort of, I mean, I couldn't have done it without any of those folks. I also had an assistant director who was able to assist with a lot of the movement pieces. So yeah, we had a small group. We didn't have, a set designer. I didn't have a traditional lighting designer, a traditional costume designer in the traditional sense, but I had a core group of people.
Awesome. And
I would say for Young Jane specifically, that was just all me. I just literally kind of figured out that, like, oftentimes in projects, you do kind of need to be your biggest resource. So the fun of Young Jane, it was also very stressful and exhausting, but the fun of it was just like doing a quick Google search on how to do certain things, creating costumes. I just like went into my closet and I found some like overalls and cut those up and, you know, stuff like that. So, I mean, I just kind of made sure that I was constantly learning things as I went along and just kind of made myself my biggest resource. But I don't do that on all the shows. Like, I did a 3-person show called Ben and George, and basically all 3 of us kind of created that show together. You know, one of us paid for rehearsal times. One of us made the posters and things like that, documenting the journey of the rehearsal process. So yeah, I mixed it up.
Yeah, and both of you kind of teased it out a little bit, so I do want to touch on it. But you have Ben, you were saying these puppet elements, and then Young Jane, you talk about the outfit, and also the look to Young Jane. That was, both these were 2 very iconic things that were very recognizable, and that we did see a lot throughout the festival, like beyond the confines of your shows and your stages. And so I'll just add to this on, like, there's further down the line. You've written it, you produced it, and then there's a whole marketing gambit, right? But both of you did a really good job of, like, I saw this little puppet around everywhere. I think there are even photos of it at opening night, posing against the backdrop. And, like, there was these things of, if you're choosing to do a work that is so theatrical and has something so unique to it, that isn't often seen on stages, or even just on Fringe stages for that matter too, it's like, how do you get to use that and say, like, this is what's really fascinating about my show, on top of the incredible story and the plot that speaks on its own. Here are some other unique things about the show. I know that we saw Young Jane's outfit and makeup quite a bit throughout the festival, which was like, people were just so fascinated. And the Fringe culture kind of cultivates itself to invite question. So, like, you'll be at office hours, people were like, you gotta tell me what's going on. Like, you know, like, people are like, I must know, or people will just gravitate towards it. And so there's these things of, like, when your producer brain is going and then switching to marketing, or you have someone helping with socials, was there a idea of, like, this can help me market the show? Or was it like, well, obviously we're going to do that? I don't know if that was really a question. I'm more like,
Go ahead.
Oh, nothing.
Okay. I mean, I will say, like, when I first approached the marketing for this show particularly, like, for me, it's an adaptation of H.G. Wells' The Time Machine, which was sort of my first initial push. But when you say that to people, it doesn't necessarily excite. Like, they're not necessarily like, why would I be interested in this, like, boring elementary text by H.G. Wells? Which, granted, for sure. Like, if you read that book, it kind of starts to read like an essay at some point. So I approached it that way at first, which was a mistake. And I totally vibe that. Like, my poster, my marketing, like, it said puppetry, but it definitely wasn't the hype.
mm-hmm.
You know, like, kind of had to go digging into the marketing or the description to learn about, like, how it's a contemporary sort of, like, glance at it, how it's sort of like the reverse, we did some gender swapping of the characters, and that there's, like, a heavy concentration on movement puppetry. In retrospect, I wish I had led all of my marketing with the puppetry. Like, from day one, I wish I had just really pushed them, because that ultimately, I think, is what made us stand out more.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a conversation when we got to more, like, in-person events with my puppet director, where I was like, do we want to spoil this reveal of this amazing, beautiful Boom Rock Boom puppet that he built, this 3 feet high, gorgeous puppet? Like, is that a reveal we want to spoil for the sake of marketing? And we ultimately came up with, I think we have to. And we did. We started taking it to office hours. We took it to at night. We just started using it as a method, because what I realized is the combination of H.G. Wells' The Time Machine, which people just think of it as this boring sci-fi text, and puppetry. They're like, wait a minute, where do these two combine? And that is where I wish I'd sort of, like, started. But I'm glad we finally got there. You know, but yeah, it was. I would say that if you have that unique element in your show, especially when there's 400 plays, lead with that in all of your marketing and with your conversations about it and how you pitch it, because it will just get more people interested. That was my experience in this.
Yeah. And again, it's kind of like what you perceive as a surprise. You know, you're the one working on your piece 24/7, but it's like, you know, the puppetry is a factor in the surprise. And you know, again, I'll also go into like cabarets in a second, like
Yes.
that surprise too. But there's this idea of like, there was a previous show too that I was assisting that was, you know, like, how do we want to, we have this like moment where the chandelier drop, we pull a lever and like blood comes out. It's all fabric. But it was like an iconic moment that ends the show. And there was this conversation being had, well, do we want to reveal that? And some people were like, yeah, we do. Because like in Time Machine and this show, like there are way more surprises. That, like, if this is like perceivably the eye-catching one, there are so many others. And there's also just the love of the language and the play itself that also sustains that interest. But like, again, there's so many shows happening, so much is going on. For Young Jane, we have a program that I don't believe will be going anywhere. It will have some modifications, but it's a cabaret program where whether that be at Fringe HQ this year or on the road and other places nearby, we invite shows to present, I believe, 4 minutes or something like that, 3 minutes maybe, 5, maybe. The number changes all the time, of the material. And it's a great way to get big interest, but also I know Young Jane, you took full advantage of this and you presented these like high octane, high energy moments where, like, to give you an idea, this year I scheduled like at 15 of these shows and we have a 90-minute slot to present everything. But everyone has like 5 minutes of tech time. It is like, I asked, like, give me your cues ahead of time and we're just going to run it. We're going to test it. Like the cues, we're not going to test the bit because that takes too long. And in 30 minutes, we tech 15 shows. And they're like, good, got it, good. We're going to start it. And it's a wild time, but it gives you a sampling of everything that there is to offer at the festival or some of it, you know? And Young Jane took full advantage, but I wanted to say, like, what was the impetus of like, oh yeah, this will work for an cabaret slot?
I didn't know if it would work or not.
Yeah.
Literally, that cabaret performance was the first time I had done Young Jane in front of an audience. I had ever like debuted that music in front of an audience.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just, I was like, something will come out. Something, yeah. But I knew I did prepare it ahead of time. I knew that I wanted to do the Fringe Cabaret. So like when I was working with my engineer in the studio, I was like, we recorded all the songs and the tracks, got them ready. And then I was like, oh, I need this little sample here for preview performances. So we like cut that together. So I was prepared somewhat, but I kind of just sort of leaned into the nature of like punk rock, that spirit of kind of just like improvising on a day of. And it was, I would say it was not smart on my end. I probably should have rehearsed a little bit more because I was very out of breath and very, very sweaty. So, yes, you know, being punk is cool, but you should be punk and prepared.
Punk and prepared. That's a good title. Yeah, because also for those that don't know, Fringe HQ this year was kind of the words of the impetus for the design of that whole space was disco punk. And I just kind of love the punk and prepared. It's perfectly describing Fringe too.
Yeah.
So much fun. But also like, because I think we did cabaret twice, and the first time you were a tad out of breath, and then the second time you're like, I got this. This is old hat now.
Yeah.
And like there was just a moment of growth. You're testing that. Going back to talking about like the spirit of your shows and something about when you're entering the space, you know, entering your audience. Sorry, from the perspective of your audience, they're entering the space, and you're cultivating an atmosphere and a spirit of what's going on. What were some of the things that you guys utilized, or you two utilized, on what you wanted within even like the first 5 minutes of the show? Or if there was a pre-show, you know, that's not always a given at Fringe. But like, how did you navigate what you wanted to feel? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I will say that, you know, my stage manager and lighting designer, Jaffe, I was in the space, and, you know, our show was at 90 minutes barely, and we had 2 3-hour techs, which was not enough time. But it worked. And I think that like when I came in with that and said like, I have 58 cues, and she was like, oh God, okay. but I knew that there were a handful of colors that like for me were the three main colors of my show. And with that and this plot, we were able to. So she worked brilliantly in that amount of time. I thought, and I wanted to immerse the audience because I love being immersed and I love feeling transported when I go into a theater. I just really love this idea that the second an audience comes into the space, that regardless if they were just in here and saw a three-hander drama or whatever, that they left and came back and it feels different. And so with that, I used the light, the sound design of this sort of like rainy Victorian music, and I really, and then we had this chair, which is a time machine that was covered in the sheet. That kind of for me was our way of like showing that there's a reveal about to occur. So I really wanted my audience to feel immersed from the lighting, the sound, and what in the stage picture from the get-go. Same with my curtain speech, is that, depending on what space you're in, they'll have different standards for your curtain speech. But I really like coming at that with my friend who was the sound designer, do a full British dialect with that, just to like, it just sends you off on this sense of like, cool, I'm somewhere else right now. I'm not sitting in this theater. So that was my hope and my approach to that part.
I would say speaking for you and Jane, I kind of wanted the audience to kind of feel like they were coming into something dangerous, something a little sketchy and sort of just like, whoa, shit, I'm here. I wanted them to feel that. Because it's like, nature of young Jane, she's very much an anarchist. She tried to assassinate her country's president. So like, I kind of wanted this sense of like, oh no, I could be in trouble getting here, So I did my show at the Eastwood Underground, and that's such a great space. And I literally put together my set when I did the walk on tour, and I was like, yeah, this is perfect. And I was like, I set up these like 3 little stations here and have the lighting kind of sort of minimalist, where it was like light in one section, light in another, playing around with shadows and things like that. And I think I did okay. I probably should have given my stage manager a proper cue list, because there was one number that had like a bunch of cues going back to back and all the things like that. So yeah, and I think hopefully I pulled that off. And, I mean, hopefully they felt dangerous in the space. So
to kind of talk about both those things, you will have audiences that traditionally like fringe artists are themselves audiences seeing so many shows in a day, and it is kind of this thing of like, how do you take them out of that and bring them into your show? Because it is like, oh, I just saw, there have been days where like, oh, I just saw a clown show where someone was dressed up as Ronald McDonald. I just saw a magician show, and I just saw an ensemble show about death, and now I'm going into like this late night, midnight showing of someone explaining the Lord of the Rings to me. Like, you get so much that you should anticipate, like, how do I want to invite my audience into a space? You both actually also touched on it. I really want to shout it out about following punk and prepared. Lighting. Because just because there are limits to lighting doesn't mean that there isn't lighting. And so I've done both ends of the spectrum, where like I have had my first year doing Fringe, I had 100 cues, lighting and sound, and I only had 1 hour to tech. And it is a miracle that we survived that tech. But in order to do that, we had given our cues to our technician. We had a very special connection with a technician where 3 months before the show, we gave them all the light cues. We didn't change it. We already had our sound cues ready to go. We were just testing audio levels. We did not run through the show. We just did a cue to cue and programmed it. And again, we slowly over this time became smarter about it, where we really had like 5 colors that we went through, and those all repeated throughout the show. So we weren't creating new moments every single time. We just got clever and we're very savvy about it. And like, this is how this is structured now. However, I never will advise you to just get 1 hour of tech. That's insane. And in fact, many venues now encourage at least a couple more hours, or every venue is different. Some will do packages where if you get the 60-minute slot, it comes with X amount of tech time built in anyway, and you can purchase more after, right? So there's a lot of things that you learn that you're like, no, don't do that. That's wild. And yeah, it's just, you're going to save yourself so much stress if you allow yourself, especially if you have a technically heavy show, that more time, because you're going to thank yourself way more rather than not. Mm-hmm. Something else going to speak about tech, but we'll get around to it again. What I wanted to also talk about is both of you having these, we've kind of been talking about it, larger than life concepts, and how you start to creatively figure out how to make this happen. Or like Ben, you have a time machine, you have these monsters coming in life. When you're writing it and when you're kind of brainstorming everything, you brought in outside collaborators, which is amazing in the process. But what did you have an inkling of how you wanted it, or you're like, no, I need someone else to come in and present this already?
Well, for the time travel was because if you're not familiar with that script or that text, I guess it sort of begins with this sort of like semi-boring Victorian like TED talk that's like this time traveler explaining time travel in the terms of 1895, which are Looney Tunes in our current, we know way more about quantum physics now than any of you. So it's kind of like this boring, like, and I knew that for me the switch to that the audience needs to have, that we need to have, is the time travel, because it's got a switch there for them to go, oh, this is gonna get fucking weird, because that's what I want it to do. I want it to get weird, and that book is weird. And so for that, I was sort of stumped for a long time, because for the big budget idea, I've got projections and I've got like a whole time machine thing that can roll around on stage. And so I just kept coming back to this concept of a chair, because it is described as like a something that they sit on. And I knew from that I wanted to use like chairs that felt Victorian, and I didn't want to use the chairs just supplied by Spaces. So we just went and found some wooden chairs. So from there, I went, okay, I have an ensemble of people and I have a chair. And so what can I achieve in rehearsal that's going to feel fun and transportive and it doesn't take up a lot of my tech time that doesn't exist. So that's when I came up with the idea of flashlights, multicolored flashlights, and using this umbrella, because we use umbrella throughout as a spinning thing. So it was sort of like, okay, and a lot of that came out honestly in the workshop. Mm-hmm. It's like we were talking through the idea for the time travel with the group, and it was like, I have this idea of flashlights. Is it dumb? I have to sort of like look at these people's faces as I'm handing them these flashlights. And I think ultimately it saved us so much tech time, as we could do it in rehearsal over and over and over and over. We didn't have to worry about anyone in the booth doing much of anything. And the ensemble was doing all of the tech elements. Yeah. So that was how I kind of like took that idea and just sort of like concentrated it into a Fringe approach and made it feel magical.
Absolutely. And that, like, again, like that embeds itself into rehearsal, and that becomes like, I know that there are, we see a lot of different theater productions, and at certain levels are like, no, actors do this, crew do this, but at a Fringe space, it is kind of a melding of the two often, where it's like, we need these things to be accomplished, and here are the tools at our disposal. Like, here's what's on the table. And this is like also like when you're shopping around, which I do want to talk about too in a second, shopping around venues, knowing what you're envisioning. But young Jane, I want to talk to you also about like the impact of sound in your performance too.
Yes. I'm actually going to talk about the first solo show that I did at Fringe, because I think it applies to this question. It was called Edward Lysanko, and it was originally envisioned as a full-blown ensemble musical piece. But like last minute, I had a falling out with the composer, and he was like, "You can't use any of my music," and then I couldn't get a cast, so I was like, "Okay, well, I'm just gonna have to one-man the show." And I was just like, how do I do it? Because I had a sequence where it was like, a war happens on stage. So how do I do that? The character is, committing all these acts of violence. So how do I do that? Or I have another character that I have two other characters that I couldn't cut. And I was just like, okay, do I portray these characters or do I do something else? So I kind of figured out sound cues, sound effects. I did some pre-records of the other two characters, and I was acting on stage while listening to them. I had a really cool sequence where I was just sitting on a box, and this character was kind of just, shouting down at my character, the spotlight, like the voice of God, and I was kind of creating the visuals in my head based off of that. The war section, I had someone record like a news report narrating what was going on, and then we have the sounds of people running and guns going off and explosions and things like that. And we got to cut the lights off in the theater so the audience could visualize what was going on in their mind, and creating a pretty cool, horror experience. So definitely sound cues will save your life if you're just doing a one-person show with with a bigger world. And for Young Jane, I was like, I couldn't depict shooting the president. But I know that people do go on social media and they get their news from that. So why don't I just have a social media sound clip that kind of gives you the exposition right up front? That way I could just go along with the show. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, because there's both of your shows too, in fact, had fantastic soundscapes that were happening, either the humming of the time machine or even coming in and the music in the rain. But also knowing that I correct me if I'm mistaken, but did you have a wireless mic in the?
No, I had a mic with a cord, and I wanted it that way.
Oh, okay.
Just something about that just felt very old school and just right.
Yeah.
I just love watching performers with this mic and how they navigate that. I know, with Hedwig and the Angry Inch, I just loved, just her dragging this, corded mic around and was adding to her frustration. And anyone who knows Hedwig, how insane she is. So I just kind of loved doing that. And, yeah, that was fun.
And it's those small details. When we needed to have Ray, I think we gave you a wireless.
Yes.
So I was curious in what you navigated in your other spaces, which kind of leads me into, once you have your script, once you know what's going on, how many venues did you shop around to? Which we encourage everyone, explore the spaces. I think last year there's maybe there were 30 brick and mortar spaces, but even that, the Broadwater Museum has 4 theaters. Some have 2 in their space. So we encourage them to all of them to look at what they all offer, see what they have, what are their packages, and what are their tech options. Some are oh yeah, we have movers in our space and we can program them. And others are we have, old school incandescent park cans, non-electric. They don't change color. They just turn on and they do the thing. And sometimes it's great for your show, and sometimes I want something else. So I want to say, how many places did you shop around? And was it a factor when you here's my vision and here's how I want to accomplish it? Did that affect which venue you went?
Yeah, I mean, I know. So I've done. I have a 48-hour theater festival called 1448 Hollywood, and we perform at the Broadwater main stage once a year, and we use every single space in here because we rehearse all day, and we're always taking new submissions. So if people want to come play, it's fun to come play. As actors, a writer, as a director, as a designer, as a musician, 1448 Hollywood.
Was that the Instagram name or what's this looking
at 1448 Hollywood, 1440 Hollywood. That's what it's in February this year.
Oh, nice.
But that led me to, I already knew Adrian and Bruno and Rebecca here, and so I had a relationship there. But I did explore other options because I think my brain goes to how many tickets can I actually sell? Is sort of where I come to. I know that I have a cast of 8, which actually helps me quite significantly because you have all of their friends and family, right? Yeah. And so I kind of battled between 50 and 75 was sort of where I was living. I knew I couldn't get a 99-seat house. But I felt for me, this space was unique enough and interesting enough and had being right amount of scenes. And then tech packages, which were like 2-3 hour techs for a 90-minute show, felt doable. I would say as a recommendation, depending on where you are, because they split them up, your two techs, they split them up, and you could potentially get your first tech like your first week of the person, which to me was a nightmare scenario. So luckily I got my two techs like the last 2 weeks, not too far apart from each other. So yeah, I do, but yes, I had to shrink it in my head. Like again, if I was thinking about it for the main stage, that's a different production entirely.
Right.
So the second that I knew I booked this space, I went back to the script and looked at it and could like start to really visualize how do I reduce it? How do you get 8 people? Because even like being up here, this is not a very big space, and so having 8 people up here, it like shrinks it quite a bit. Yeah.
Do you know that yours going to go with
No. I went to maybe like 4 or 5 other different spaces. I was thinking, I think I contacted the McFadden theater space. I also looked at LGBT Center, the Actors Company, where I did my first layout. I did look at that one, and then I finally landed on the Eastwood. And I wasn't really thinking about like pricing and things like that. That's probably like smart on like the business end. I was more so just thinking like what space was I gonna fall in love with immediately, like what felt right, and Eastwood just felt right.
Absolutely. Because that's also true. Yeah. Like you really can also like envision like your audiences and what is their experience, and like oftentimes every artist, producer, person is like, what's the parking situation like at this venue? And I will say across the board, parking is wild in Hollywood. I mean, you all are here today, and that's wonderful. And even on a Sunday morning where you're like, it's probably going to be fine, it was probably a little tricky. And so in the heat of the moment during Fringe where there's like, 40 shows happening in 1 hour, like all this stuff's happening, like parking is wild. And there's just things of like knowing ahead of time the venue you want for your show, but also the venue you want for your audience is also super important. Fully acknowledging budget. Ben, you kind of mentioned it too, and I'm going to shout this out, but like, talking about like, how many people can I reasonably get for my show, right? Like to be the audience to come in. That is something that is explored in the annual report of this year, just type in like on Fringe 2025 annual report. It has a lot of really good producing stats, but also this year we created a page, called, your sell-through rate. And the sell-through rate is the idea of like, out of all of the shows that did Fringe this year, what percentage of audience capacity did they sell? And that will allow you to understand your budget. Meaning like, I think the stat this year was the average, and this gets a little tricky, but the average was 59% of every house was sold. Or like you sold through the run of your show, 59% of tickets. So almost 60%. Reasonably, if you're starting out with some money in the beginning, which I do think is important to do. But if you're starting from nothing, you're like, okay, I'm going to make 40% of whatever the tickets I'm pricing at. And then if you get 20% back up, it's just in case something happens. But essentially, it allows you to get a better understanding of what the audience will look like, what the average audience look like for Fringe, and how you can build off of that per your producing skills. All of this gets way more explored in future panels. Like we have panels dedicated to marketing, the finances of it all, that will happen later in the year. So don't worry if all of that sounds scary, because it kind of is, but it's fine. We have workshops and we talk it through. So no worries. Just want to shout that out. It's something you can keep looking at. It has a bunch of great stats on it, actually. But going back to what we're talking about here, I wanted to ask about, were there technical elements in your show that you're like, I really wanted this, but I have to sacrifice it for right now. It's just not working. And was it like something like, I'm going to fight really hard for it? Or was it like, I tried, I just got to let it go?
For me, no. My show was simplistic enough to where it was just like everything went to building was only like 30 minutes, so I think that was fun.
I think once I started to calibrate my brain to scale, which might be different for everyone, like there's just elements that you might visualize going a certain way that just might not be achievable with the time restraints and the loading restraints and your whatever your rehearsal restraints are with an ensemble like 8 people scheduling. I will say that in tech, right, using like 5, because we didn't have a lot of time, so we had like 4 or 5 colors of looks, and my thought was, great, I'm going to repeat these once we establish these looks. I have the Victorian London Street, I have this time traveler's mansion look, I have the future green, and I have this Morlock red and sort of variation on those. I established those early on, and like those are just going to repeat. This tech's going to go smooth as shit. What I didn't realize was when they build those cues, and now I'm more familiar with QLab, they're also building the fades or the pops with them. So if you're fading in one scene, 5-second fade into this thing, you're like, great, we're going to go back to that forest look now. She's like, great, it has a 5-second fade. And you're like, oh, that's different. So that's a whole new cue. They have to rebuild that. That's part of your tech time. So I think that I had to, in the moment during tech, just be okay with. You just go, okay, well, I already built that cue. It's got a 5-second fade. I guess I have to make that. Yeah. And so those things were just in the moment learning, kind of like killing your babies a little bit. But I think that's sort of like the game was improvise and call audibles in the moment and be confident in those choices and be confident that your choice that you're making is for the right reason and that it will work out. Yeah. If your vision's clear, it will work out. You just have to, you have to be willing to stay loose and adapt.
The stay loose and adapt thing is so true. The flexibility is the name of the game, as well as prepared. I will add too that like we are saying a lot of technical like theater kind of things, but I do want to say that like there is another panel that we'll be talking about with venue technicians, and we'll also be like surveying all of our venues and seeing if anything's been updated for them. And we have this very big talk where we kind of establish a base language. So that people who aren't necessarily familiar with tech theater are able to be like, okay, I know what they're talking about when they say a cue sheet. I know what these terms are. We kind of create this little 2-hour panel over Zoom that we discuss a base level so that your technicians and you can kind of have this level of communication that will help streamline it a little bit, as well as trying to like come up with sound cues, come with it. Like every venue will want things differently, but that's going to be another panel where we kind of gauge how to do that. Because again, they can quickly become very stressful, and it's good to have like a sweet treat with you also when you get stressed. One of the things too that I wanted to talk about was we're going to shortly go to the audience and ask some questions, but also I asked this in the last panel. I'm always curious about it because I think it's so fascinating. On the advice retrospectively that you'll give yourself in trying to accomplish a piece that is pretty large scale, larger than life. Is there advice that you would want to give yourself that you're like, man, I wish I knew that 2 months earlier, or it's like, I wish I just knew that from the get-go, and that would have helped streamline my like creative process? Or it's the opposite. It's like, I did it perfectly the first time, and I didn't need any, which is rarely the case.
Yes, I think, well, going back to your previous question for a second, we did cut like 2 entire puppets at one point. So like there were more puppets, but once we saw this space and we're in the space, we spent 1 rehearsal in this space previous to starting rehearsals, and then we did one. I booked the space for like an hour to practice our load in and our load out, which is separate from our package. So I highly recommend if you can do that, if you can book it and practice being in here in your space before you are in tech, that'll save you all that time of figuring out spacing and all that stuff. Sorry, can you repeat your question again?
Yeah, it's if you were gonna give your past self some advice, be like, heads up, this is gonna come ahead. But while you're thinking about that, I will shout out this thing of load in, load out, especially if you have a lot of elements. There's this thing where you're rehearsing it in the space, but if you don't have that, if you're not able to rehearse until the day of, having a schedule, and also like, every venue will have most things will have either a light board operator or someone that is the stage manager of that like tech portion. I also recommend having someone else who's like with you along the process, or who's just there during the day of tech, that you'd be like, hey, here's my schedule I'm trying to do. Can you help me figure it out? Where it's like, I've seen shows where they're testing sound cues and the director's doing the sound cues and someone else is like, run through the load in, load out sequence right now while we're doing this. Like, you could do things like, it is your time and you can use it however you'd like. The being prepared part of it is crucial. Like, you can figure out, like, okay, things will be happening simultaneously. I trust my team that it's going to work out. But they need to know, like, okay, loaded happens here while we're doing sound. We're going to do lights. We're not going to do a blackout because people are on stage, you know, kind of like there's so many moving parts. But if you, like, you know, the week before, be like, hey, here's what's going to happen. Now my core team of 3 or 2 people knows what's going on. We'll be fine. Just wanted to shout that out to you as like having those plans.
Yeah.
But yes, the question was, if you give yourself some advice before you started this Fringe production, what would it be?
Ooh, I can't think of anything because, like, I kind of learned, you know, more because I did 2 previous French productions, so I'm still learning. I still have things that I could fix and be more polished in, but like, I kind of just kept learning as I was going along. So it's like I pretty much have things figured out just from, like, I knew that I needed like something to transport all my materials in, so I just had like a suitcase and I put that in there and just make sure I had every single thing that I need. If you can't print out programs, I would say, like, find out a way to make QR codes. Those are very, very important. You know, making sure you print out your box office information ahead of time. That way there's not a lot of heavy lifting on the theaters yet. Just little things like that. If you're doing a musical that utilizes tracks, make sure you have those complete way in advance. Like, I had my stuff, like, you know, done way in advance. It was the first thing that I thought of. So yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah, I mean, I would piggyback off that and say that, yes, having your sound cues, your music, or anything like that created and used in rehearsal, like, use them in rehearsal before you're in tech, will save you so much time. Like, if you're actors or you are already, like, used to the timing of your sound cue, that'll save you so much time in tech. A lot. So coming in with like eight ensemble members, you know, and I knew a handful of the actors, and then some of them we cast, but I haven't really met. And so, like, there was a devised element to the rehearsal process for us. And for me, like, I didn't really know what some of those things would be. It was really dependent on what my ensemble brought and what we built together. So because of that, there are some things that I didn't have a stage manager, which in retrospect, like, looking at the complication, how complicated my show was, is insane. That I did, like, I really, like, honestly, like, there are so many elements, simply down to we have like 5 wood chairs that just became a bunch of different things throughout the play. And in rehearsal process, we were moving these chairs everywhere. And I'm not a stage manager, and so I'm not watching for tracking of set pieces. But then we get to another point to play, and we're all standing around going, wait a minute, where are the chairs right now, and which chairs are where? And you're just standing there looking at these chairs going, we should have numbered these from the beginning. We should have known exactly, like, where these chairs are moving. Someone should be tracking this, but we didn't have that. And so, kind of going off what you said, having somebody who can be there through the whole process, whether you call him a stage manager or assistant director, and sort of like trying to think through those logistics things of the creative process and having them track that's going to save you so much stress. And I wish I had that from the beginning. And next time I definitely will.
I can't stress enough that it's like, whether or not they're super involved in the show, I think I'm going to talk about the previous count too, but it's like just someone that, like, you have as your person, you know, who can assist in either physically reducing or just emotionally, like, there for you is super important, because Fringe is, I think Ellen Lowe say it all the time, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint, and you don't want to burn out. Like, the year I did it, I was so excited, I had done all this stuff, and then halfway through the festival, my body gave out and I got sick and I had to like miss 2 weeks of the festival. And out of a 4-week festival, that's half the festival. But I was like, I don't want to get anyone sick. I don't want to get my past sick. I just have to stick at home. Thankfully, I was the playwright and like I had done the set, but I was like, it's out of my hands. To the point that like the stage manager, producer, co-producer person was like, I know how all this is getting transported. And I actually wanted to ask you, Ben, because so much we think about is like, how do we accomplish it in the stage? But what sometimes gets forgotten is how do you get what's coming to the stage here? The venues rarely have space to hold your things for you. Sometimes the venues will be like, hey, we've got some chairs, we've got some cubes. And again, you could do a lot with cubes and things like that. But if you have things coming outside, it is like for the Broadwater, for example, if there's 100 productions in these 4 theaters, there's no space to store your stuff. I was like, you have to bring it in. And I'm curious, I've seen shows that brought a U-Haul. I've actually seen once a year now, there's a show that brings in a U-Haul. The year before, it was someone installing a pool. Like they designed a pool. The show took place in a pool. It was made for girls. And then this year, they brought in like a full living room. And they do it in 15 minutes because they have a large enough cast to do it. Yeah. Or they get friends that are like, we're not here to be in the show per se, but you are helping me load in the show. But I want to know, like, what's the thing, like, who's at cars and who's going to bring things in?
Yeah. So for context, like our show had these wooden chairs, this rolling ladder piece. And then we had we created masking, like a curtain up here for, and then we had acting blocks. And
costumes and puppets.
And a lot of costume and puppets, thank you. And I think that, yes, like the venues rarely have storage. Broadwater, I think, does for the main stage. And then they were trying to find like a storage unit around to help us out. Didn't work out. So I think with that in mind, like I had to visualize how mobile this stuff could be. And then, yeah, asking your ensemble who's willing to take stuff home. Luckily, like this ladder unit fit in my SUV. That was when I picked it up. I went, okay, this better fit in my car, otherwise I'm screwed. And it just did by a hair. And I just to kind of what he said, yes, venues will have like blocks and chairs and things like that. And I think that's a totally usable thing. But I do think that if you're trying to like fully visualize something that you have in your head and you want it to pop, bringing in your own elements in any way is really just going to like change the space entirely. So the black chairs or the boxes. So having an 8-person cast, everybody had their own part in some way, and asking them very kindly if they would be willing to transport was the move for sure.
I will also do a side call to action thing because I'm like, if any of you are doing a large scale show and are like exploring storage spaces in the area, if you can find one that doesn't close at 6 p.m., tell me. I have been, because I work in shows that are like pop up real quick and go away. And there's so much stuff, and for like, so I think I live in the valley, so it's a bit of a trek sometimes. But like, if you know a storage space that stays open late, that's a game changer for everyone in this area who's doing large scale stuff. Because then it's just one car trip and you come back. Awesome. But like, it just let me know if you figure that out, because I would be so happy. And what was I gonna say? Stuff on the story unit thing. Really, I love it.
No, I mean, it would be great.
It would be a game changer.
And yeah, that ladder was in my car for 2 months.
Yeah. Oh, I was gonna say also though, fully, because yes, the Broadwater, like the studio stage has like no room. You know, it's that 30-seat theater, which is very intimate and it's great. But like the main stage, the 99-seat theater, I think there is some more space, and they have allowed like sometimes they tape out like, oh, here's a 4x4 square space. Yeah. Here's what you got to work with. Alternatively, I know that like Eastwood Pack last year, 2 years ago, they have the underground, but they also have their main stage, and they have so much space in the back. And oftentimes they're like, yeah, you can store things in that main stage space. So like I've seen shows there where they had massive rolling flats, or they had 12 children's desks that they like all lived backstage and they had all these shows there. Just be aware, but like know your theater well. So like, for example, I know the entrance to this space, the double doors, and then this door here, anything I bring has to fit in that size. For Eastwood, if you're going to perform on the main stage, you have to go up some flights of stairs. Your set also has to come up there. In 2023, I performed our Fringe show at the 905 Pole, right? Which is like, there's a driveway, and then boom, there's the theater. So it's super easy to roll. I had 2 massive bookshelves and then a desk, and my actors were like in a parade bringing all their costumes. And then when we transferred over to Eastwood Pack, we had to do all of that up 2 flights of stairs, and we did it. But it was like, oh boy, okay, you just customize it to the space once you have it and understand that. We will absolutely continue this conversation, but I want to throw it to the audience and ask questions. We've kind of veered off into like the writing, producing side of it all. So I'm like, if there's anything that writing wise you kind of lost in the conversation, like please let us know and we'll talk about it. Are there any questions? Yeah.
Cause I come from like a dancer background,
Mm-hmm.
like a theater background, but cause my parents didn't really have money to do like a free clown text. It was kind of like we came in, we would do the text, like we would be like a dance, and it would be like red, green, this. It wasn't like all like spectacle, I guess.
Yeah.
So when you're writing a show, like I took stage craft, I took singing, but I don't remember how to write the cues. Like the specified cues, like, oh, green, this is lime green and it does this. Like, I can't, like, mouth is dog faster than my brain. But like, how do you write the technical and the technical names so that when you're in the space, the technical person knows what you're talking about? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sorry if it was too big.
No, not at all. Do you guys want to take practice too? Because I have some thoughts to that. I love to hear them. You too.
I would say for me, the first show that I did actually like write out a cue list. I don't know why I didn't do it for this current show, but but for the first show I did, I had like a cue list, and I didn't specifically know, what certain lights that I had, like the greens or like second electric, first electric. I just knew that I wanted like an isolation here, so I said like, okay, scene 1, page 5, downstage right light. I didn't need, things like that, just certain basic things. I don't think it's something that you need to overthink. It's just more so just when you have your theater tour, just really look at the space and see where things are being pointed. You don't need to know like the names, but just know like downstage right area, there's a light. Upstage, there's a light down there. So, yeah.
Yeah, I when I write at least, I'm mostly when I'm thinking about lighting, I think about feeling or setting, and don't necessarily think about the specifics of that, and hope that my stage manager and lighting designer at this point is creative and collaborative, and so that in that tech I can say, great, so this is a futuristic area, and nature is taking over, so I see a lot of green, and she'll be great, and then she like build something, and then we just kind of sit and look at the levels together. So I think I'm kind of, don't overthink it in the writing stage. Just know in your head what do you want this to feel like, where you think it's set, and then work with your stage manager to really capture that. And sometimes you have to just settle and go, great. Yeah, this is good enough. Let's keep going.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I will also add to, like, I know the second show that I did, Ben and George, that was the writing process was definitely collaborative with my stage manager, and she actually helped me tell the story better than I ever could. Like, my main character dealt with a lot of like mental instability, and I didn't really think about that, but she found a way to like really justify like a moment where the character's having an anxiety attack and how they snap out of that. And I was just like, that was fucking cool, you know? So yeah, definitely lean on those stage managers as much as possible. If they really, really like you and you really like them, you guys will, you know, find a way to make your place really popular.
And I will say, like, all the stage managers and technicians that the venues use for Fringe, like, they're game to play. Like, they are not unfamiliar with what Fringe is. Like, they get, like, oh, one technician, which is the other thing that's like the coming in with a little bit of humility, going like, oh, this technician, I know for the Bravo example, Jaffe's the technician for this phase, at least was last year. So it's like Jaffe was looking over 40 shows and all of them were teching and like, there's so much going on. But Jaffe's also like, I'm excited to play. I'm excited to make the vision happen. And as it comes with like the language of it all, like, yeah, we can provide some helpful base language and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's also like, what's the intention or what's the vibe you want to set? And I always think about this moment where I was talking with my director about the lights, and my director is a very, for that one show, was a very big fan of the Batman video games, which I've never really played, but like they seem like fun. And my director was like, I want Penguin Iceberg Lounge Blues, which apparently is like the Penguin has a nightclub and it's called the Iceberg. And I said, okay, I don't know what that means. But our lighting designer did, and our lighting designer was like, "That's fun. Like, let me see what that happens." And we got this like interesting blue landscape that wasn't just like one set tone blue. Yeah. It was like, here's some lighter blues in the back, and like the intensities. Like the technician did the whole thing, and like, here's the picture I've painted based off of something specific that you've given me. And that's always so much fun. I still think about it today because I'm like, Iceberg Lounge Blue. Yeah. Like that makes sense. It's specific and it made sense. And I was like, great. I didn't need to get it. I didn't need to understand it. But the technician was like, yeah, I can make something work with that. Like, I get that. Yeah. Are there any other questions? Yes.
So each venue has an assigned team. You're not responsible for bringing your own.
And so every venue varies. But typically, again, like there's so many venues of Fringe, and some are even BYOV where you're bringing a venue to Fringe, and that's a whole other process we can talk about later, and a whole other panel actually. But yes, typically, TD is an interesting word in the Fringe space because it's like they're not building props or looking after scenic things, but they're like there's like a steward of the theater, and they're
I'm playing sound. Right?
Yes. So typically, most theaters do have someone that is technician that is on the day of and during performances. In fact, some venues are like only that person who we hire can touch it. Exactly. Or works differently where it's like a venue's like, here are 5 people we recommend that have worked in our space, and you hire them directly. Like everyone works very differently in the spaces, but that's where you're shopping around and getting to know where you're like, oh, X theater, they have a package deal and they provide technicians. Whereas this theater doesn't include a technician, but they recommend people that I can hire out to help me with this. So yeah, yes, in few words, some do, some don't. You always get to check around. But yeah.
I will add that lighting is definitely that person. Sound is definitely on you. They'll press the button, but they're not going to build any sound cues for you. So like for my tech, I brought my computer, had all my sound cues there, and if I needed to edit them on the fly, edit them real quick, put it in a drive, give it back to her so that we could keep going.
Does that mean like when you bring sound in for a show like this, they're gonna just like you'll have the you're talking technical concepts,
sorry,
and it's all kind of beyond. Like that's you're talking like so like I'm with you. I don't get you guys say. I understand it.
Yeah.
Right. So like I got sound there, so I'm bringing sound in. I'm just gonna bring in a little floppy disk that are gonna plug in, and it'll have all that.
Yeah, I think it'll be different depending on
probably not fun.
It's different. Well, no, I mean it genuinely is different on every venue, and some are having older technology. So I think for a hot minute, one of the venues did have floppy disks, and so they were like, "Here, don't lose this." Yeah, you're like, "Okay, gotcha." So and this is explored more in the tech panel kind of thing, but if you are not a sound person and you're like, I just have the sounds you want, and have them downloaded as MP3s. Traditionally, that's what most venues want. They're like, hey, if you're not coming in with a fully ready QLab file, that's fine. Like, that's not something that everyone has to know. That's why the technician's there to help out.
Yeah.
But like, bring your sounds that you wanted, and typically they'll either ask for them to be put onto a flash drive, so you can just plug in and they can create your QLab file, or sometimes
I
they'll
say
ask,
QLab a lot.
oh, okay.
I don't understand
I'm
what
sorry. Let me.
QLab is.
Yes.
It's the thing where you put the lights.
Yes. So
all your it's a software application that you can
I
type.
assume it's something like that, right? But
Yeah.
it seems like common knowledge thing.
Yeah, it just runs the lights and the sound.
Okay.
And it's basically just, it's a software where you just press go and the light cue or the sound cue goes. So like that person up there will know all of that. And like, you just bring that, your music or your sound, and then be like, I need this at this point, and they'll do it. So it's really just, you need the MP3s and they'll help you put it in the right place.
I have a great idea.
Yeah.
that also works too.
Yeah. Thank you.
One more question.
Yeah, sure.
The show that I'm thinking of doing is about like my parents and how they from and dance. So like, can you like now somebody who says you use the aisles? Like what do you do if like the venue's like, oh no, you can't use the aisles, but you need to use it for your show.
So, I mean, that's where like having early communication with your venue comes into play. I'm not unfamiliar. I'm not super familiar with venues that don't allow that. Because I mean, like venues are like, this is your space, and like you'll see a lot of like interactive clown shows that will come into the aisle and we'll have conversations. I think the bigger rule is don't break anything, but like walking up and down the aisle is okay. I will say that you always want to be aware about leaving things in the aisle. This isn't necessarily, I mean, a venues will all follow this too, but it's more of like a fire safety thing. Like, don't vision that you're going to have a block right here in the aisle, because then, you may, if there's an emergency for whatever reason, people gotta leave. But no, I've never heard of a venue saying, no, you can't play in the aisle. However, it becomes more elaborate. It's like, well, what are you going to do in the aisle? Like, do you have liquids with you? Like, on stage, we've got hardwood floor, but in the aisles, we've got carpet. And like, that's the conversation where it's like, hey, I want to do this in the aisle. And from all intents and purposes, we'll probably be fine. We just want to check in with the venue because it's their space and we're all guests here, and we don't want to destroy it.
And also, too, if you're doing anything in the aisle, you want to make sure that the audience knows that right off the bat, just for like sightline reasons, and they don't, get up and try and go to the bathroom in the middle of the scene or something like that.
Oh, absolutely true. Oh, I will say every venue is different where like you guys all entered through the side actually with the audience space, but there are some venues where like the entrance to the theater is like right there. Meaning, if anyone comes in, you get to make the decision on if you want late seating or not, but like people could just walk through your space. So that's another thing to figure out. And also when you shop around, like you see the theater, you see what they have. It's that kind of deal. But yeah, are there any other questions?
Is there like a specific time where you shop and go see lots of venues the same day? Like, is there anything set up like that?
Yeah, not so much seeing the venues all on the same day because they all have different schedules of bookings. However, this is funny. It's like there's like I love them, but we have like 15 panels. And they all go uploaded on YouTube, so it's great. But we have a whole panel dedicated to meeting the venues, and we kind of corral at least 15 of the venue managers. And they all discuss the intricacies of their venues. It always leads into a little bit of a mixer afterwards where artists can talk to them one-on-one. And more often than not, they also are like, here are the 3 days currently that we have where you can come visit the space, look at it. You're not booking, you're just like, you're looking at the space. Also, one of the office hours tends to convert itself into a venue edition office hours where venues come in, they have like a one sheet of everything that they can do. So yeah, there's not like a whole day where it's like, oh, well, let's schedule it. Go for it. Unless they're fine with it. But we try to bring the venues into one room and to ask those questions. I will also say HollywoodFringe.org/venues will give you a list of venues that are opted in to the Hollywood Fringe Festival. Currently right now, there are some that, they're just kind of regulars. Like I know the Broadwater, I think is listed right now. And it's like, they haven't registered yet, but these are people that typically stay within. So you can look at that and see like who was here last year, who's likely to be here again. And a lot of them have like text specifications, even like how much square footage, like it's 15 by 12 in the space, that's also super helpful to begin that search. And they put photos. I will say, don't message them right now on the website because they won't look at it. Like there's an internal messaging system for Hollywood Fringe, but that doesn't really kick up until like January, February. If you're interested in wanting that conversation with them, like just go to their direct business email and website because they're not looking at their Fringe emails right now. Yeah, of course. And if there are no other questions, maybe one more pass. Then amazing. I want to have an opportunity to have you two shout out anything you've got going on right now or anything coming up soon. And also, or if you just want to shout something else out, that's also fine too.
I don't have anything going on right now, but I do just want to say this, because it's something that's very important to me as an artist. I believe that if you are choosing to be an artist of any kind, that is a calling on your life. And your job as an artist is to reflect and respond to the times. There is a lot going on, and we need to talk about it. Now is not the time to mince words or hide behind metaphors. It is time to call things out, see them for what they are, and just try to awaken people. Because we just need so much help. We need so much love. And yeah, so you be an artist. Yeah.
I mentioned earlier, 1448 Hollywood, the world's quickest theater festival, is my theater festival. It actually started in Seattle in like the 90s. They have like a really strong running festival there, and there are now 4 satellite festivals. We have one in Hollywood, one in Austin, and there's 2 in the UK. So we're trying to build sort of a global community. But the basic concept is that we get together sort of like 25 actors, 7 writers, 7 directors, a group of designers, so costume designers, set designers, prop designers, and some musicians. In many cases, these are people we've never met, and sometimes, we've done 3 festivals now, and this will only do our 4th. So we're building this community, and we're really trying to bring in people from every sort of aspect of theater and performance in LA to sort of like keep our community growing, keep it bigger, keep it going. But the basic concept is like on Thursday, we all meet here at the Broadwater and main stage, and nobody knows anything at that point. We draw a theme. We all get to write down a theme, like a writing prompt, and we draw that at random. And then the writers go home, 7 writers go home, and we're each write a 10-minute play that night. And then on Friday, the directors pull what play they're going to be directing at random, and then they pull who's in their cast at random from a hat. And then we rehearse all day, and we do 2 shows on Friday night. And then we do it again on Saturday, but a whole new set of plays. So the writers write another set of plays Friday night, and the directors pull another play at random, new cast at random. And we do that stuff. We do it Friday and Saturday here, and it's just been growing, and our audience has been growing, and it's all volunteer. Everybody on staff is a volunteer. Everyone involved is a volunteer. It's really our way of trying to create artistic, creative community and keep the juice of creativity and art alive. And we've received so much positive feedback from the artists who've come. And our job as producers of that is just to give people a platform and a nice little safe container to just go big or go home and have fun. So that's something that I love. It's something that I'm constantly wanting more people to come get involved with. So if that sounds fun, like a thing that you might be wanting to do, we're opening submissions right now, and they close in December. So we just opened submissions. 1448 Hollywood is our Instagram handle, and also our website, 1448hollywood.org. Yeah, so come play if you'd like to.
That's exciting. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Young Jade. If I can get a round of applause for them, please. Oh my gosh, it's incredible. I'm going to hit pause on this recording.